Good evening. Tonight is Friday, April the 2nd, 2021, and it is Good Friday. On Good Friday, Christians all over the world remember the death of Jesus Christ on the cross. One of the ways to remember this death and the story associated with it is to hold a tenebrae service. The word tenebrae is Latin for shadows or darkness. It can also be translated to night or death. The purpose of this event is to remember the final hours of the life of Jesus Christ. You'll see to my right and in front of me several banks of candles. Each bank is called a tenebrae hearse, and tonight we will share with you some poetry from the poet Anne Weems, as well as some musical pieces from our choir here at Holy Communion Lutheran Church. And these two things will be mixed in with the gospel readings telling the story of Jesus' final hours. After each gospel verse is read, some of the candles on the tenebrae hearses will be extinguished, bringing us into the sorrow and darkness of a time without Christ. Once the last verse is read, the last candle will be extinguished. And here a brief warning. After the last candle, you'll hear a loud noise called a strepitus. It means loud sound in Latin, and the strepitus represents the closing of a book, the end of Christ's life, and the convulsion of nature at the death of our Lord. Be prepared for the loud noise so you're not frightened. And finally, each of us here will reverence the cross and leave the church quietly. Now I'd invite you to join us as Holy Communion Lutheran Church presents their tenebrae service.
Holy Week. Holy is the week. Holy, consecrated, belonging to God. We move from hosannas to horror with the predictable ease of those who know not what they do. Our hosannas sung, our palms waved. Let us go with passion into this week. It is time to curse fig trees that do not yield fruit. It is a time to cleanse our temples of any blasphemy. It is a time to greet Jesus as the Lord's anointed one, to lavishly break our alabaster and pour our perfume out for him without counting the cost. It is a time for preparation. The time to give thanks and break bread is upon us. The time to give thanks with and drink of the cup is imminent. Eat, drink, remember. On this night of nights, each one of us must ask, as we dip our bread in the wine, is it I? And on that darkest of days, each of us must stand beneath the tree and watch the dying, if we are to be there when the stone is rolled away. The only road to Easter morning is through the unrelenting shadows of that Friday. Only then will the Alleluias be sung. Only then will the dancing begin.
Gospel according to Mark, the 14th chapter. It was 2 days before the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread. And the chief priests and scribes were looking a way to arrest Jesus by stealth and to kill him. For they said, not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people. Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray him to them. When they heard it, they were greatly pleased and promised to give him some money. So he began to look for an opportunity to betray him.
Between parades, We're good at planning. Give us a task force and a project, and we are off and running. No trouble at all. Going to the village and finding the colt, even negotiating with the owners, is right down our alley. And how we love a parade. In a frenzy of celebration, we gladly focus on Jesus and generously throw our coats and palms in his path. And we can shout praise loudly enough to make the Pharisees complain. It's all so good. In between parades that we don't do so well, from Sunday to Sunday, we forget our hosannas. But between parades, the stones will have to shout because we don't.
Our story continues. On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb is sacrificed, his disciples said to him, "Where do you want us to go and make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" So he sent 2 of his disciples, saying to them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks, where is my guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make preparations for us there." So the disciples set out and went to the city and found everything as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he came with the 12, and when they had taken their places and were eating, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." They began to be distressed and to say to him one after another, "Surely not I." He said to them, "It is one of the 12, one who is dipping the bread into the bowl with me. For the Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to the one whom the Son of Man has betrayed. It would have been better for that one to not have been born."
Screaming souls upon the shattered rock. Nightmare. In darkness, we await the crow of the cock.
Our story in Mark continues. While they were eating, he took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave thanks, and said to them, "Take, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, gave it to them, and all of them drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly, I tell you, I will never again drink of the fruit of the vine until the day when I drink of it new in the kingdom of heaven."
Holy Communion. Eat, drink, remember who I am. Eat, drink, remember who I am, so you can remember who you are. Eat, drink, remember who I am, so you can remember who you are and tell others. Eat, drink, remember who I am, so you can remember who you are and tell others, so that all God's people can live in communion, in holy communion.
We remember
Our story continues in the Gospel of Mark. When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you in Galilee." Peter said to him, "Even though all become deserters, I will not." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this day, this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. But he said vehemently, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all of them said the same.
The clapping is hollow, synchronized, and music. We simply find ourselves celebrating celebration, dragging our feet into the wildwood. Instead of running into the street, we want our life from birth. Instead, we get life from death, emptied from a tomb, out of a garden, into the street. When we learn that the music will go undanced in the wildwood, the only living is on Easter Street.
St. Mark continues. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. And he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. He said, "Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." He came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came a third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking a rest? Enough! The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. You see, my betrayer is at hand."
Lost and found. As we approached Jerusalem, the crowd stood at the gate and cried in a tear-choked voice, "We are lost in his death." Upon the hill, the angels sang, "We are found in his rising."
story continues. Immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him there was a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." So when he came, he went up to him at once and said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. Then they laid hands on him and arrested him. But one of those who stood near drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to them, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I was with you in the temple, teaching, and you did not arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And all of them deserted him and fled.
Fair is fair. We still don't like the way it was done. The whole idea of a sacrificial lamb is not to our liking. What's fair is fair, and there was no justice here. The innocent one, the righteous one, the holy one, put to death, because the ones in charge of politics wanted to hold on to their crowns, and the ones in charge of religion wanted to hold on to the keys to the church. How could they do it?
St. Mark continues. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes were assembled there. Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting with the guards, warming himself by the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many gave false testimony against him, and their testimony did not even agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him, saying, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands.'" But even on that point, their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But he was silent and did not answer. Again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus said, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of that power and coming with the clouds in heaven." And then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard this blasphemy. What is your decision? What is it?" All of them condemned him as deserving death. Some began to spit on him, to blindfold him, to strike him, saying, "Prophesy." The guards also took him over and beat him.
No dances. There are no dances for dark days. There is no music to bellow the pain. The best we can do is to remain still and silent and try to remember that the face of God, and how to kneel and how to pray.
Mark's story continues. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." But he denied it, saying, "I do not know or understand what you're talking about." And he went out into the forecourt. Then the cock crowed. And the servant girl, on seeing him, began again to say to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." But again he denied it. Then after a little while, The bystanders again said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean." But he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know this man you're talking about." And at that moment, the cock crowed for the second time. And then Peter remembered that Jesus had said to him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept.
The courtyard scene. Over and over again, we sit in our courtyards, our mouths speaking what our hearts are full of. We do not know him, do not know him, know him, know him. Echoes loudly, emphatically, filling time and space, heaven and earth. And yet, the saddest part is when the cock crows, we don't have the ears to hear. At least Peter had the ears to hear and the heart to weep.
And St. Mark continues, "As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, 'Are you the king of the Jews?' He answered them, 'You say so.' Then the chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, 'Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you.' But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival, he used to release a prisoner for them, anyone for whom they asked. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom. Then he answered them, 'Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?' For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke to them again. 'Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews?' They shouted back, 'Crucify him!' Pilate asked them, 'Why? What evil has he done?' But they shouted all the more, 'Crucify him!' So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified."
Room in the heart. Death abides not on a hill called Golgotha, but in every heart that makes room. Life abides not outside a garden tomb in Jerusalem, but in every heart that makes room.
continues. Then the soldiers led them into the courtyard of the palace, that is, the governor's headquarters. And they called together the whole cohort. And they clothed him in a purple cloak, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on him. And they began saluting him in mockery. "Hail, King of the Jews!" They struck his head with a reed, they spat on him and knelt down in homage to him. And after mocking him some more, they stripped him of his purple cloth and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. They compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Then they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he didn't take it. And they crucified him. They crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to divide which each should take.
The vigil. The ham is cooked. The apple float is made, just like my grandmother's. And now I'll fill the baskets and then sleep. But first I'll pray that through the dark and silence, Easter morn will come. I know too well the sin of taking things for granted and how adept we are at extricating holiness from holy days. Please, O God, once more, forgive.
us remember always that this is our story. Here's another poem by Anne Weems, The Story and the Child. The child comes, and we dye eggs and make a cake and decorate. Why are we doing this? The child asks. Because, I answer, life is about to happen, and on Sunday morning we'll catch the stars. He looks at me quizzically at first and then grins. It's then I ask him to tell me the story. The only way he'll learn is to tell it himself. The only way we'll learn is to tell it again and again and again to this child.
It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 bandits, one on his right and one on his left. And those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, you who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross. In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, he saved others, he can't save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe. Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And at 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, listen, he's calling for Elijah. And someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick and gave it to him to drink, saying, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come and take him down. And then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain was torn in two from top to bottom. Now when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, truly, this man was God's son.